If you are watching this, happy summer. I'm recording this a few days before summer, so it feels a bit premature to say, but happy summer. I am not a summer person, but I am trying to be. And I, as you know, if you are not new here, you know how much I love the seasons and how much I love living seasonally. And every season I really like to curate these videos and just content in general, especially on Substack, about what I enjoy reading, listening to, watching, different activities and things like that over the season. And they're kind of like these big master lists of media to consume, healthy media. So I wanted to do that with you today in video form. And I do have a large Substack post filled with all of these things, and actually it's a lot more detailed. I have a lot more book recommendations, films, books, activities, recipes, all of that in that Substack letter, which I will link in the description below for your reference. But I wanted to just do maybe pick a few highlights from the piece and share it with you today, and hopefully it will give you some inspiration to live more seasonally during the summer months. And I'm an autumn girl and a winter girl, so this is kind of like a season where I find myself prepping for autumn, always prematurely, but that's okay. So that's kind of what I have on the agenda for today's video. So I'm not someone who is trying to have a hot girl summer or a soft girl summer. This year I just want a real summer, maybe something a little bit strange and a little witchy and haunted and gothic and all of that good stuff. But I've really been thinking a lot about what it means to move through a season slowly, and not necessarily in a curated way, but in a way that feels tactile and intuitive and a little out of step with everything else going on in life. So, like I said, I'm going to share some books and scents, like fragrances, candles, things like that, that just feel like, the heat of the summer and memory and just this very real version of Caitlin emulated, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to start with books, and these are books that really feel like sunstroke, like girlhood and trying to stay still in a heat wave. And some are slow and philosophical, others are strange and obsessive, but all of them are just deeply seasonal. So I want to start with this book by Iris Murdoch called The Sea, the Sea. And this is about a retired man by the sea who is slowly losing his mind, trying to reclaim a woman he once loved. It's very delusional and obsessive and gorgeously written, like drowning in your own ego under a blue sky. I've talked about this book ad nauseum, but Bonjour Tristesse by Françoise Sagan is about a teenage girl on the Riviera who plays games with love and jealousy until everything unravels. It's very sun-soaked and morally slippery, but also sharp. And if you have ever been a teenage girl, I think that you would appreciate this book. Moving into my favorite genre of summer books, gothic summer books, starting with We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. And this is about two sisters who live alone in a crumbling house as the town closes in. It's basically a fairy tale for girls who are a little too strange to be forgiven. Also The Haunting of Hill House and Dark Tales by Shirley Jackson, and also The Crucible by Arthur Miller is just I feel like it's such a great gothic summer book. And Summer by Edith Wharton, which is about a girl who falls in love and falls apart in the heat of a small town. And this is Edith Wharton at her most sensual and subversive. It's similar to Bonjour Tristesse, but with dust and Puritan guilt. Moving into something a little bit more philosophical, we have Agua Viva by Clarice Lispector, and this is about a woman who just speaks in spirals and undoing language and time, and it's more atmospheric than narrative. it feels like you're reading something electric, or you're standing too close to someone who you don't quite understand. Any Clarice Lispector works in the summer, her books feel like, I don't know, like Brazilian bossa nova and just pineapple and jungles and like sweaty, hot, sticky summer. I don't know how else to explain it, and I don't know if that makes any sense, but I love Clarice Lispector. She's one of my favorite authors of all time. Also, anything by Toni Morrison, like The Bluest Eye, and also specifically Beloved by Toni Morrison, which is like a ghost story wrapped around grief and memory and motherhood. It's just scorching and sacred, like the heat rising off of something that has just been buried for too long. It is such a beautifully written book, and it just, I don't know why it feels fitting to read in the summer months. I cannot find my copy of this, but Franny and Zoe by J.D. Salinger is a spiritual crisis that unfolds into a stuffy apartment while the world just kind of blurs and hums around outside. It's existentialism in a bathrobe, and it just kind of feels like summer in the city when you're unraveling, but you're also trying to sound smart about it. This one also just feels like a great summer beach read. Okay, those are all that I want to mention, with the exception of these two as well. And also, the covers of these are so stunning to me. Hangs a Man by Shirley Jackson, and also this cover of The Crucible. This is how I want to live my summer, right here. Stunning, stunning, stunning. Okay, moving into films. These summer films specifically are not like blockbusters. These films feel like daydreams that have just gone a bit sour, that just kind of sit with you and haunt you in very soft and unexplainable ways. And the first film that I want to talk to you about is Bonjour Tristesse, both the one from the 60s but also the new one in 2024, because Chloe Sevigny is in it and anything she does is gold. But it's basically a retelling that captures the original sun-drenched nihilistic book about jealousy and decadence and emotional cruelty that is wrapped in linen and sea breeze and salty skin, and it just feels like the perfect summer film to watch. But read the book first. A Tale of Summer, the Eric Romer film from 1996, is about a boy who drifts between three women in a seaside town, never really choosing either of them. It's just about indecision and desire and this soft ache of not really knowing who you are yet. Daisies from 1966 is just a chaotic, anti-everything and crazy mess of a film, but it's very mesmerizing, and it's about two girls who just destroy everything for the fun of it. It's basically girlhood as a riot and summer as this like surrealist experiment, but it's such a fun, playful, quintessentially summer film. I don't think you can go the summer without watching The Virgin Suicides, the one from 1999. It's a hazy, languid, and devastating film about a group of sisters who are observed and idealized from a distance, and they slowly slip away. And it just, the whole film smells like overripe fruit and fading innocence. And I obviously anything Sofia Coppola touches is also gold, so highly recommend this if you haven't watched it. Next is My Neighbor Totoro from 1988, and this is about a gentle summer of waiting and wondering. It is childhood in its most purest form. There's quiet joy and soft magic and the strange comfort of big silences. This is one of my favorite Ghibli films, and it's so perfect to watch this season. Next on my list is La Collectionneuse, another Eric Romer film from 1967. This is about a girl and two men in a house in the south of France, and nothing really happens, but yet everything just kind of simmers and marinates in desire, boredom, power, and detachment all just kind of manifest and unfold between all of the characters. I kind of like, when it comes to my summer aesthetic, I do a little dance between having a very like Eric Romer summer, but also having a gothic summer simultaneously. And I don't really know how to explain it, but I just find myself kind of like wavering between those two trains of thoughts and ways of living and existing in this season. And I think it's just because I really deplore summer, and I'm doing my best to romanticize it, and sometimes my mood is a lot more like French Riviera Eric Romer with a twinge of goth, and then sometimes I'm just like fully immersed in goth summer. But in any case, so those are books and films that I recommend this season. Hopefully there's something on that list that you love or that you fall in love with. Okay, moving into some summer fragrances. I have been spending so much time with perfume lately, and not just to figure out like what I've been loving, but more importantly, what I haven't been loving. So I want to share some scents that have been shaping the air around me, and they're not necessarily summer perfumes in the obvious sense. They're more personal than that. I have them kind of like separated into 3 different categories. And the first one that I want to talk to you about, I titled Sunlit Musks and Warm Florals. So this category is kind of like the fantasy version of summer. It's warm skin, long brunches, flowers that are starting to wilt just a little bit. Everything smells soft but very much alive, like linen in the heat. And these are really the perfumes that I reach for when I want to feel like I'm becoming someone again. I want to start with Carnal Flower by Frederic Malle. This is an unapologetic, wild, feisty tuberose. Like if a flower decided to seduce you with zero subtlety, but somehow it worked, it feels almost too much. And then when you realize that that's the point, it just becomes the most magical, wonderful, well-projecting, like stunning floral that you could wear in the summer. This is by Dominique Ropion. If you are a portrait of a lady girl, this is your summer and spring, sister to that fragrance. I love this fragrance so much, and I love anything that Dominique Ropion creates. He's extremely brilliant, so highly recommend Carnal Flower. Odette by Gourmand is like Odette and Odile by Gourmand are number 1 on my wish list right now. They are the swans. This one, Odette, is so pretty, but it's also very weird. Like a rose wearing lip gloss and sunglasses. Like there's something about it that feels almost existential. Like you're at a party, but you've also dissociated in a way that's like kind of nice and pleasurable. It's very fizzy and bubbly and sparkly, and I love everything about this scent. I love everything about Gourmand and everything that they do. If you are familiar with Universal Flowering and Marissa Zappa's, this is the love child of those 2 creators. Speaking of, Holy Hell by Universal Flowering is like if you took a bottle of tanning oil and left it out on an altar. It's ridiculous, but it's also weirdly spiritual, and there's a toasted seashell note in this that I find weirdly addicting. It's ridiculous, but also spiritual, and the kind of scent that would be worn by someone reading the White Album at the pool. It's stunning. Okay, antithetical to those 2 is Valaya, which is like the most ethereal fairy princess fragrance known to woman. This feels like expensive fabric that is like in movement. It's very sheer and bright, but it has a backbone to it, and it's clean, but in a polished way, not like in a laundry way. And it feels like you're slipping into something white and structured on a hot day when you don't want to be perceived, but you also kind of do. I will say that when I layer this with Molecule, I get more compliments with that layering combo than almost any fragrance that I own besides Portrait of a Lady. So do with that what you will. Moving into my favorite category, Gothic Summer. This is for the version of you who is still wearing black in July, who still lights candles when it's 90 degrees out, and it's summer, but there's also this shadow of ominousness and hope that autumn is around the corner. These scents really make room for silence and grief and memory, and they are romantic, but in a way that ruins romance. This is my baby. This is Relique des Morts by Arisa Legrand, and this smells like a chapel that is still warm from someone else's prayer. It is like cold stone and incense, but it's also something soft and ethereal in a way. There's so much incense in this scent, but this is one of the most wearable Gothic fragrances, because I think Gothic can turn witchy in a way that doesn't feel wearable and very man repeller, which I love, believe me. But I feel like there's a subset of Gothic fragrances that are just so stunning and beautiful and also very wearable, and you know that you're never gonna like offend anyone if you want to wear this to work, or like, you know, somewhere where you don't want to be experimental with your scent. This is just perfect, and it's such a light, spooky Gothic scent. It smells like the inverse of a fragrance, if that makes sense. Like a ghost wears this scent, I promise you. And I love this. This is so good. If I could recommend any Gothic fragrance in the history of the world, it would be this one. Next is Baptisma by Chapel Factory. Heresy is another one of their scents, but this is by Chapel Factory, and it's clean but haunted, like being blessed with something that you don't ask for. It's milky and lactonic, but also light and kind of treads along the lines of like a skin scent, and maybe something else that lingers. This is a really good, light, airy scent for summer Gothic. This is my newest acquisition. This is Un Air d'Apogée by Maison Violet, and this is like golden and slightly rotting, but in the most beautiful way. It feels like a dusty book that has been left out in the sun, or like someone who writes love letters that they keep to themselves and never send. There's something like very addicting about this, and it's very clean smelling, not too heavy, so you can wear this on a hot, steamy day. Okay, I want to move into woodier fragrances, and I feel like these are great for days that feel like you've been on the screen for way too long. They just smell like being barefoot, and like leaves are crushed under your feet when you're walking, or like boots that have been left out on the porch after a rainy day. And none of them are heavy. They're very breezy and wild and green, and they smell like the part of summer where people forget that any sort of like digital device exists, and it's perfect. You could very much make a case for Triple T by Two Summer being an autumnal scent, but I'm going to make a case for this being a summer scent. And this is just very quiet and thoughtful and almost monk-like. It's like drinking tea on a wooden porch with the windows open. There's also a mint note in this. And let me tell you something. I'm the biggest mint hater in the entire history of the planet, unless it's in a peppermint mocha during Christmas time. But this is really nice, and it's not toothpaste mint, which I find absolutely deplorable. This is perfect. It's a nice hybrid balance and a perfect tea scent. Okay, this is Eudelict by Fischer. This is such an interesting scent, and I want to explain it to something. I want to explain this to something that might be like a little niche. If you've never been to California Adventure when it was like back in the early 2000s, before they changed and ruined everything, there was this ride called Soaring Over California, and basically you're kind of like suspended in this hang glider that would very much send me into a spiraling panic attack if I went on it now. But at the time I went on it, and I loved the ride because there was this scene when you were like dangling in the hang glider where like you were literally soaring over California, and you went through these like orange grove trees, and they like projected this mist into the air so everyone could smell this like fresh orange, like sea salty smell. I don't know. There's no orange in this scent, but it very much kind of like brings me back to that feeling of like you feel like you can breathe, and it just smells like air in the mountains. It's very clean, mineralic, herbal, and the kind of scent that you want to wear when you want to just feel cleared out. I don't know, like this feels like an inhaler. I don't know how else to describe it, but whatever kind of witchcraft and magic that they're doing in Iceland to make this scent, give me 1 million of these. This is the perfect, fresh, woody summer fragrance. I promise you, it's beautiful. Next is by a brand that I love so much, Arquiste. And this one is called A Grove by the Sea. And this is very earthy and salty and green, like standing under a fig tree near the ocean. But you're barefoot and you're reading and you forgot to reapply sunscreen. And it's just this whole like immersive like world and universe that you enter into. There is an olive note in this, which I find so deeply satisfying, because if you ever like remember the olive lotion from the Body Shop from like the early 2000s, it reminds me of that. It's very nostalgic for me. But if you, Arquiste is stunning. I love the perfumer, I love the founder. They are doing amazing things, so highly recommend checking that whole brand out. We're moving into the last category, which I am extremely picky about, which is summer gourmands. And I don't usually love sweet scents, but these feel different, and they're not necessarily cozy. They're a little bit unhinged, and they're kind of like girlhood if girlhood had fangs. And they're like, it smells like cake left out in the sun and vanilla on someone else's collarbone and just burnt sugar. And I find that very amusing and attractive. So this first one is really special to me, and it's called Annabelle's Birthday Cake. And it's literally frosting, but it has an edge. Like if a birthday party turned into a very strange, weird art film, it's sweet and plasticky and kind of emotional in a way that I don't really want to explain. This is Marissa Zappa's, and she is the other co-founder of Gourmand. But I just like, this bottle is so cute to me, and it's very like princess-like. Like this is like, if you've ever seen the film Daisies from 1966, this is what those girls would wear, 100%. Okay, the last one for Summer Gourmand is called Vanilla Haze by Fugazi, and this is like vanilla, warm, nutty, without being too sticky. It reminds me of Disneyland, walking down Main Street. It's like cinnamon sugar churros and nostalgia all in this bottle. And I know I have like referenced Disney twice, which is weird because Disney adults terrify me, but I'm talking about like the nostalgic Disney from the 90s and the early 2000s, and the movies from like the 50s and the 60s, with the exception of a few. But it's just very like childlike wonder where nothing has to be perfect, but it's just very comforting and enveloping in a strange way. And I really very much like this. And it's not a heavy, cloying vanilla scent. It's just like something you would wear to the fair or the carnival or to sleep if you want to have sweet dreams. So these two are lovely, and I love the brands of both of these people. If you want more fragrances, like I said, I have my whole Substack posted below with more fragrances in each category if you want more recommendations. So I want to talk a little bit about some summer activities or things to do during the summer months that feel a little bit more grounding and seasonal. The first thing that I've been doing a lot recently is ordering perfume samples and actually like taking the time to sit there and pretend like I have my own little like apothecary and smell them and let them sit and dry down and take some of my favorites, try them on my skin. And I'm really like trying to utilize scent as a form of like self-study and self-care by journaling and like being able to kind of like think about things without language. And I have like, this is kind of bad of me to say, but like I'm realizing that I love smelling things but very, very rarely do I dedicate an entire day to wearing a perfume on my skin for the whole day. Like, I'm so picky with like what I like on my skin. There are so many fragrances that I find absolutely stunning and beautiful that I just enjoy the process of smelling. But when it comes to actually committing and wearing it on my skin, maybe 5. And I mean like 5 total in the whole year, any season, that I could confidently say that like I wear this and I feel super confident and I have no regrets wearing it at the end of the day. Even though I have a lot of fragrances, I mean, most of these I got sent. So, and I talk about them because I think that they're absolutely beautiful and I think that they could be beautiful for you. But I'm just very picky on my own skin. And I think maybe it's also partly commitment issues, but I do very much enjoy the process of smelling things. I could smell things all day, and I love that so much, and I find that very therapeutic and comforting. So anyways, the other thing that I want to do more of this season is go to the farmer's market every week and build meals and like snack ideas off of what I find and whatever is looking good in the market that week. Because I feel like seasonal eating is a very grounding ritual, like tomatoes, stone fruit, herbs, not from like a wellness standpoint, but just paying attention to what is supposed to be growing in the ground during this time of year. I have also been prepping for autumn like it's a religion. I become a bit insufferable in autumn. So I'm sorry in advance. But during summer, especially in late summer, because I'm an a late August birthday, I get very excited for autumn. And I will like test soup recipes and make lists and pull out books. I'm not trying to rush summer. But I'm just trying to soften into what's coming. The other thing that I love doing, if you are trying to live out a gothic summer, is watch horror movies on like monsoony, stormy days. I think horror is so much better when it's just humid, and like dank and wet outside and dark. I also want to make a case for psychological horror over like summer slasher films. So I don't know. I know that like summer slasher is kind of in for gothic movies, but I love a psychological thriller that kind of like makes my soul tingle in a weird way. Anyways, like the film Picnic at Hanging Rock is such a great example of that. It's like fever dream psychological horror. Anyways, I also like talking about like real summer activity ideas. If you're also weirdly seasonal like me, one of the things that you can do is like buy seasonal candles, things that are like fresh. And one of the candles that I absolutely love, it's called Abd El Kadir. I think that's what it's called, by Trudon. Trudon makes incredible candles. Highly recommend. Yeah, I can put that down in the description because I can't remember the exact name of it. The other thing that you can do is like get herbs and flowers and press them in between book pages and use that, as a bookmark. And I think also like when it comes to reading, like this is such a great time to read books about religion and philosophy, and just for like the mere purpose of trying to understand the world around you, even if you're not religious, because I'm not. Another idea that you could do is volunteer at an animal shelter. And I feel like that kind of experience can really reset you in ways that you don't expect. Also, hosting dinner parties, outdoor dinner parties with people who you feel really close and connected to. And I think there's something really special and intimate about that. Like eating pasta outside, drinking wine, like on a summer night. I think that is perfect with jazz music. Okay, the other thing you can do, I know that they say spring cleaning, but you could also reorganize your bookshelf. you could organize it in a way that speaks to you, because I'm not going to tell you how to organize it, but I think that there's something very therapeutic about that. And then you can get out all of your autumn books. You can also, I thought that this would be like a really cute idea, is like making your own tea blend using herbs that you have, or going to like stores that sell loose leaf herbs and just, I don't know, making different combinations that sound good to you. I think you should take advantage of the summer rainy days and go outside and walk and get wet and just be one with nature off the screen. I think that's like the perfect time to indulge in nature, is on a summer rainy day. There's something so beautiful and nostalgic and comforting about that. I feel like you should just make a list of things to do this season that feel real, and they don't have to mean anything specifically, but I feel like that's just the point of seasonal living, and, you know, letting yourself respond to activities and things to do that really speak to you. So I guess this summer doesn't have to be some like weird transformation or a cleanse or an era or an aesthetic, especially in the world that we live in right now, which is just like, things feel very heavy and ominous right now. So for me, I just want to smell good and eat a lot of tomatoes and light a candle when it's too hot and read books that make me feel slightly unwell. And I just want this summer to feel lived in, a little witchy and a little romantic and comforting in a way that feels good to me. Summer has this very weird and strange way of distorting time in a way that feels almost dangerous. The days don't feel like they're stretching, they just spill into one another, and hours melt together like heat off the pavement, and before you know it, it's evening again and nothing ever really happened, but yet everything feels very saturated. And it's not that summer is slower, it's that it feels heavier. And time doesn't move forward so much as it presses down on you, and you start to feel less like you're inside of the day and more like the day is inside of you. Heidegger would say that this is the most honest kind of being, and that to exist is to exist in time, not beside it, not above it. And we're always moving toward an end, even in moments of brightness, even in moments of, especially in moments of brightness. And he called this being toward death, and not as a morbid fixation, but as this kind of mental clarity and a way of living that acknowledges transcendence and transience. And it recognizes how fragile and finite every moment really is. And that awareness, that sharp little ache behind the sweetness of things like summer, for some people, is what makes them matter. And summer is full of these tiny endings, fruit that bruises too fast, flowers that open and bloom only to fall apart, and sunlight that lingers a little bit longer than it should and still vanishes. There's something very gothic about that, and not in this obnoxious aesthetic way, but in the way that it holds decay inside abundance. It's in the way that beauty, spoils so quickly, in the way that even joy starts to feel like mourning, even if you pay close enough attention. And I think, that's what this season of summer really demands of you. Attention, not performance, not productivity, not celebration, just presence and being here while it's still here, and letting it be too hot or too bright or too much, and letting it all blur together and letting it go. I think nostalgia always hits harder in the summer, and maybe it's because it's the only season that seems to reference itself while it's still happening. The smell of sunscreen, the sound of sprinklers, and the way that light curls around 7 p.m. and none of it feels new. And even when it is, it feels like you're living in a memory that you didn't know you had, like something is echoing inside of the moment. And I think that's what makes summer beautiful. The few parts for me that feel beautiful, at least. Summer nostalgia isn't really about what happened. It's about the feeling that something happened or that something could have happened. And you could have missed it, or you didn't miss it, but you realize how much it mattered to you in the moment. And not to mention Heidegger again, but he would call this, a kind of thrownness and the feeling of being tossed into the world without explanation and trying to make sense of the pieces. And I think summer makes that thrownness feel soft and drowsy, but no less existential, because nostalgia, when you really sit with it, is about recognizing your own finiteness. It's about, not longing for a past, but longing for a self that you didn't fully inhabit at the time, or maybe a season that you didn't hold close enough, or a moment that slipped away too soon. And now the longing of itself becomes its own kind of presence. So maybe the work of summer isn't just to be here, but maybe it's also to let yourself feel the ache of being here a little too late, and to sit in the sun and remember the versions of you who once did the same thing. I think it's important to feel, their absence of these moments and memories as a part of the warmth, and to realize that you can't return, but you can notice. And that noticing and that tenderness toward time is spellbinding. Like, that is the philosophy. And if you allow it to, it's more than enough to find yourself being present and able to enjoy moments more often than you think. Even as someone who feels like I rush through this season in particular, I am trying to be more present, and I am trying to have the realization that part of the reason why I cling to nostalgia so much is because I'm running away from the moment, and I want to savor it as much as I can this season. And what better way to practice than in your least favorite season? I feel like it's going to be challenging, but I think that it's very necessary for growth in my life, at least for right now.